Jess Connolly, I cannot be more excited to have you on for real. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh my gosh, my joy. I'm worried about how much fun we're going to have. I'm nervous for everyone else.
Well, I am nervous just because I think so highly of you and adore you. So I just hope I do. I already told you a very embarrassing undergarment story before we turned on the mic. So let's just hope I hold it all together. But you know what? That's actually completely in my mojo with you.
I love it.
Just for the listeners, in case you think season 2 is going to be when Kim pulls it all together, I assure you that's going to be a no. I have known about you, Jess, for a long time. I have friends who basically tattooed your name on their bodies.
Oh my God.
Because of how great your work is. I had not met you in person until this summer at Hope Heals Camp, run by our beloved friends, Catherine and Jay Wolf.
The best.
Seriously. And you welcomed us the first night. You were the pastor to the volunteers, you and your husband, Nick. You have the sweetest expression on your face right now because you know that the plane's about to go down, a little Mayday. So you gave this beautiful welcome. I was coming from a rather depleted moment that we don't need to discuss. And you at the end said, listen, if you need prayer, if anybody needs prayer before we go into this fairly intense week, just come find me.
Mm-hmm.
I sprinted to you again. And some part of my brain was like, wait, she might be famous. And I ignored that because I just needed prayer. And so then I snotted actual snot on your hands. It was a beautiful prayer that you prayed for this woman who looked forlorn and like maybe she should get back in the car just for a little bit and regroup. You were so good to me, Jess Connolly.
I think I need to get to tell my version of the story because I will tell you, I don't remember sprinting. I have to come into, you have to hear my side of the story of that. I am the pastor's wife / like one who'll be teaching, who will get done teaching and go through the prayer line because I'm like, I need God.
Yeah,
I need
that's
Jesus.
The truth. That is the truth, Ruth. Man,
I have not stopped needing God. I don't plan to graduate from needing God.
Right.
This is a true story, but like if you want to know how I roll in my context, I actually one time it's one of our favorite stories to tell about our church. I had a sweet college girl say, listen, it means so much to us that when we come over to your house that you like dirty it up a little bit to like make us feel more at home and like that you're always wearing yoga pants because like you just want us to feel at home. Just, as FYI, as we record this, like I haven't seen makeup for days. I'm wearing a dirty shirt. And she's like, and that you always go first intentionally in like confessing or needing prayer to make us feel more comfortable. And I promise you to her face, I was like, I need you to know I'm not doing any of this for you. I actually just need God. Right. And I have 4 kids and 3 teenagers and I smell because sometimes I have a lot to do. I'm not doing it to be cute for you. So that's my context coming into our first meeting. I do not remember you sprinting and I do not remember snot. Had you snot on me, I would have been fine. I would have been okay. I would have been A-okay. But I don't remember you snotting. And I just remember you being like, I'm tired, which we were going into what was going to be just an exhausting and beautiful experience. And so I'm going to tell you one more thing about this. I do something very often at churches that I call a reverse altar call. So I'll do what I call a reverse altar call. Sometimes it goes great and revival falls, and sometimes it goes horrible. And I've seen them both. But I do a reverse altar call where I'll say, listen, what we're not going to do is say that the like weak, broken people who need God are going to come forward and we're all going to watch them. And so I say, if you need God, you can't come to the altar and the rest of you can sit in your seats. Yeah. If you've had enough of God, you just stay right where you're at. But the rest of us, we're a hot mess and we need Jesus. Yeah. So we're going to all come. And it's gone wonderful. And sometimes literally they'll be like, I'll be in a room of 4,000 women and they'll all be at the altar and people be praying over each other and snotting on each other. I've done it before where no one moves. Wow. And that's weird.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was like, thank God somebody else is like me
I
and is
think
maybe a little weary.
I think
And
you know which camp that was. Yeah. I just remember here there was power and grace and so much compassion in your prayer. And I remember saying or feeling, maybe I didn't say it, but I felt like I was coming into this with the need. It was amazing, even though I have walked with Jesus for a while and I know the math. The math is he has all, I have zip, and I need him. Even with that, I came into that day thinking, okay, I better muster something, right? Like I need to have something here.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
I knew for sure after you had spoken, I got nothing. And so the snot came out of that. But I love your yoga pants story and that you would say, I'm not setting this table for you. And that's actually my first question for you, Jess Connolly.
Yeah.
How are you a unicorn? And let me explain what that means. You have a voice and a lot of success writing and speaking and podcasting and building and even inventing new spaces for all these good things. And I've done a deep dive. Now that I've snotted on you, I really went back and back, and you are the same girl. You are the same girl as the beginning. And you are saying the same thing, which is what you just led with, which is that I just need Jesus. And that's where this starts, begins, middle, and end. And I'm wondering, practically speaking, how have you managed to do that? Because you and I both know you're younger than I am, but you've been on this road a while too. And we've seen plenty of people, particularly women, who forget those parts or who just get a little bit bedazzled maybe by other things. And they aren't necessarily talking about that same thing anymore. I'm clumsily asking you, how have you remained you and remained steadfast over the years, over the projects, over the noise?
So, well, first of all, that's so encouraging to hear. That's really encouraging to hear. Okay, I'm going to answer, and it's going to be a slew of things. And I think I feel very reticent to give any kind of algorithm or
Formula.
an equation.
Yeah.
Do 1 + 2. Yeah, formula is the right word I'm looking for there. But these are some things that have helped me. First of all, let's set the table the way that we should and say, I haven't always. I've had large chunks of time where I've kind of lost my way or lost my voice, or I would say more than I've had long seasons where I've found that I wasn't being myself. I've had long seasons where I've really battled fear about being myself. And still, just to totally, open it up, I would say there's once a day right now in my life, once a day, where the voice of the enemy or shame or whatever you want to call it, I'll think man, I could be making a lot more money if I acted like an expert, or this would be easier if I wasn't so vulnerable, or I don't know, maybe I'm I'll read somebody's, swipe through for these 5 tips. I'll read one of those and think I should be doing that. I should be giving 5 tips for this. And sometimes I do, but I'm there's a better way. I could do this better, So I still have those thoughts. And now I would say this many years in, it's easier to be I can't do that. I don't want to do that.
Right.
I'm not doing that.
Right.
But so what I think has helped me are a few things. Number one, I just want to say, I think some of it is pure personality, and my toxic trait / superpower is that I do not have a filter, and it is awesome and it's awful.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But I have.
How was junior high with that, for example?
It was so cute, for sure.
Rough. Yeah.
Or let's talk about, last night when I talked to my contractor on the phone, as I'm in the world's longest renovation, and I have to send him an apology text 20 minutes later, because there was no keeping my extreme frustration from coming out of my mouth.
I completely identify with this.
Yes. So toxic in that there is no filter. I've grown a 3-second beat over the last few years. Like I can take a 3-second beat, but that's about it,
Yeah.
and then I have to pivot. I also, this is just came to my mind when you were asking me this question. And I feel like this is just helpful. I love to talk about people's stories and sovereign themes in their life. And my sister and I've never said this publicly on a podcast, but my older sister and I have two sisters, and one of my sisters is like full biological, same mom, same dad. And we often marvel at the combination of our parents and how different they are, and what a combo we are of them.
Right.
And so I think some of it is just like interesting birth and genealogy. And you met my kids. And sometimes I look at my kids and I'm like, why don't I have a single docile one in the bunch? Why don't I have like a single one that goes with the flow? Why are all my kids so obsessed with time and schedules? Oh, that's me. They're me and their dad. Okay, cool. And obviously, like your biology isn't everything, but I think that there's plenty of negative things I could take from my biology, but I just kind of choose to look at it and be like, interesting. I'm this wild mix of, wanting to obey God and also like wanting to throw a party.
Right.
And I want to do both all the time.
Yeah.
I think some of it's biology. I think some of it is that I have two other answers because I don't think I'm going on a really long list. I think I have been really, really blessed to have some people in my life who refuse to see me be anything other than who God made me to be. And I think I say that because that is something people can actually control. You can actually like seek out those people and put them in your life. And more than that, give a voice to them, because I mean, also, Kim, you've met my husband. He's an Enneagram 1, the oneiest one of ones. And so from the moment I started doing online ministry and writing books, he was like, hey, just so you know, like we're going to be about the local church. And just so you know, I mean, for instance, when I called my contractor, or I texted him last night to apologize, it was after my husband sat me down and said, I understand we're homeowners, but we're ambassadors of the gospel first. And I say that to just say, I think everybody is like, yeah, I want supportive people in my life who keep me who I'm supposed to be. But do you? Because they're going to correct you.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you? Because also I would say my mom gets to speak into my life and she'll say like, hey, that thing you posted like did not feel genuine. That was not it.
And you're saying that's a life-giving thing to you.
It's very life-giving.
But maybe because she's earned that position,
she has, and she's safe,
yeah.
and she loves me, and she's compassionate, and that's not like a normal, regular occurrence. Sure. But I have the relationship with her where I could speak back and say like, no, I know that one might have felt out of left field, but like, no, that felt real to me,
Okay.
But I would say, I think a lot of us think we want like the real ones who are going to hold us down. And that's often like pretty uncomfortable.
A little brutal. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I have a few friends from like college and earlier who for example, everyone in my life calls me Jess. But my name until I was 28 was Jessie. Everybody called me Jessie. And it switched when we moved to Charleston because Nick called me Jess. And so people would meet Nick first because of our church and they'd call me what he called me. But all my other friends are like, just FYI, Jessie is your name. And I'm like, I hear
Don't you forget it.
I know what you're saying. So I would say getting those people. And then here's my very last thing that has really helped me that I also think could help anybody else is that this is a left turn. I let myself stay pretty angry about disingenuousness and false gospel and fake experts, and staying angry, not at particular people, but staying angry at the harm that is being done is very convicting.
Yeah. Keeps you fueled.
That was a long answer, Ken.
That was a great answer. And I sure took notes. You better believe it. That's fantastic. I have been thinking a lot about that since we met and since we first talked. How is she able to continue on that road? How can she be fully growing too, right? So you're not the
Mm.
same girl as you
Yeah.
were 15 years ago. So you're growing,
Yeah.
but you seem to be growing in the same direction. And it's just such a beautiful thing to be able to watch and learn from. So press on, press
Mm.
on. That's what I would
I'm
say. I'm
encouraged. Thank you,
grateful.
friend.
Okay, I have another question about that. And then I want to talk about your most recent book.
Okay.
I read a little something by David Brooks recently, and he said that a life of commitment requires 1,000 no's to say a
Mm-hmm.
few precious yeses. And I am guessing, I've been thinking about that phrase, a few precious yeses. I have the
Mm-hmm.
tendency to think I have 8 million yeses.
Me too.
Yeah. So just stay up later, get up earlier, run faster, run harder. And I'm finding at 46 that that's not exactly true. I don't
Yeah.
actually have unlimited precious yeses. And so coach me, coach our listeners about how do you decide that? Because I'm guessing you have to say a lot of no's. So how do you
Mm-hmm.
decide? How do you weigh? I'm sure Nick has a part of that and you have a good team that helps you, but how do you keep the compass?
Yeah. I mean, well, again, with the vein of the conversation, to be as transparent as possible, I am actually just horrible at this.
You
I'm horrible
are.
at this. I have gotten worlds better.
Hmm.
I live like a 300% more boundaried life than I
Huh.
used to.
Did that come
Um,
because of something? Did something
yeah,
push you to that? Okay.
yeah. And I would say, again, just a very honest answer. I think failure
Yeah.
due to overcommitting and under
Mm.
delivering
Mm.
has has lives in my gut. I can feel it in my bones. I know the look on somebody's face when I have let them down, and it's my fault because I gave them the license to expect something from me that I had no right to give away. So I know what that feels like. I know the like disappointment and the failure in that. And so like that's very convicting to me. Um, I also, so I will say I'm currently doing the least I've ever done in the last 10 years of online work. In fact, I had a meeting with my spiritual director the other day, and she said, "Hey, do you realize since we've been working together, this is probably the healthiest you've been?"
Mm.
And I was like, "Wow, that's so encouraging."
Mm.
And she said, "Do you see any correlation to the fact that you're working the least you've ever worked?" And I
Ooh.
was like, "Well, that's hurtful, Melanie."
Thanks.
because
Anyway, we'll see you next
because
time.
I know I kind of want to be the girl who can work the most and be the healthiest. And she's like,
Mm.
"Yes, that's actually not a graph you're going to see very often." So
Mm.
I think, yeah, how have I learned to say no? So my coaching answer, if I was like coaching you right now and you were like, how do I learn to say no? I'd say, well, you start at 80. You start at where do I want to be when I'm 80? What's going to
Yeah.
matter to me? What do I want to have accomplished? And you work backwards from there and you start asking about every opportunity. Like is this going to matter when I'm 80?
Yeah.
Is this going to move the ball forward on the things that matter most to me? And so that's one way that I do. Again, I have to go back to the people. Yes, people get a lot of permission
Yeah.
to speak into my life, and that is just so not sexy.
Yeah.
That
Right.
is really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of conversations specifically with Nick, who is an Enneagram 1, who is measured and paced in all things and does everything excellent. Nick likes to say that my life motto is ready, fire, aim. That I live by being like, let's all go somewhere. We're going. Where are we going? Who knows? And Nick is like, aim, 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 ready, aim, 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 fire.
Totally.
It's
And then hits it right on the bullseye.
literally
But there's an
does it
on-ramp.
exactly right the first time and with help. But we've had a lot of arguments like in our kitchen that sounds like me saying like, I'm tired of you being the brakes on every great idea. And he'll say like, I'm tired of being the brakes on every great idea. Please stop hitting the gas,
Slow down. Just slow enough so I can like roll out of the car. Okay.
You think I want to be the brakes? I don't.
Right.
So,
So he's able to speak into that though. And I mean, I've
yeah.
seen you guys just a quick in this little postscript here. I've seen you in real life. I don't know if Alabama heat if there is a better crucible for seeing how people really are in their real hearts
Yeah.
and lives. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
you can fake it in the Hamptons, but I don't think you can fake it in rural Alabama. And I loved watching the way that you love each other. I loved watching the dynamic between you two. I'm sure it's hard won. I'm sure you probably get a little cranky with each other too. But I also love my husband after many years and love how we are growing and what we're doing. So I like to spot that in other people. And you two have figured out something really lovely. I'm sure there have been kitchen moments moving up to it, but it's particularly fun for me because you're very different. So it's very fun to see how you figured that out, that mojo.
Yes. Yeah. They say about Enneagram 1s and 8s, if you read the relationship thing, they say he's a 1's 1 and I'm an 8's 8. And they say like this couple will either change the world or burn it down.
Yeah. Those are the only two options.
So we did a lot of burning in like the first 15 years of marriage. And I feel like we're in cement and building now. But yeah, so inviting other people in, feeling the weight of, wow, I really overcommitted and now I disappointed a lot of people and that's not fun. And I think then the positive side, like the positive reward side of it is feeling the help when I say no.
Yeah. Right. Right. That starts to taste good. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Okay. I would love to hear a little bit more. I love that you're talking about how your heartbeat for change or advocacy or that you allow yourself to stay angry at injustice. I am wondering if that is part of why you wrote your most recent book that I absolutely adored, Breaking Free from Body Shame, Dare to Reclaim What God Has Made Good. I love this book. I've heard you talk about it elsewhere. I heard you talk about it in my very presence. And I just would love to hear, how did was there an anger piece of this? Like, was there a little bit of I can't not write this book?
Yeah. I'm laughing now because I told you this story?
I don't know.
I guess I haven't because you're asking the question. So I'm like, oh, is this a good loaded question? Because Kim has heard this story, but maybe you haven't. So, and you'll totally understand as an author, you'll be like, oh yeah, I've experienced that before. So, it was the year 2020 and it was supposed to be my first year off of book writing for 5 years. I think at that point I hadn't taken a year off of book writing. And so I was like, this is going to be great. I'm going to take the year off. And on March 4th, of 2020, just about, days before really the world shut down, I went to have a meeting with my editor and she's like, let's dream about the next book. And we had always thrown out the idea of doing a body book. And for me, that was always on the table because all of my, same as you, like all of my work has come from 2 Corinthians 12:9, his power is made perfect in weakness. So if I'm going to have any kind of ministry, it's going to be talking about something that's been hard for me. Right. And so we've always said, well, I'll write a body book at some point. At that point, I did not talk about body image in any capacity online I would share some of my own testimonial things, but that's really it. But I was living in a lot of healing from years of battling an eating disorder. And so I thought one day I'll feel brave enough to talk about this. And I met with her on March 4th and she said, hey, so what do you think? Like, I know you're not writing a book this year. Do you think maybe next year we start to talk about the body book? And I was like, yeah, maybe next year. I think that's a great idea. And that night on the plane ride home, I pulled out my laptop and ended up writing the first chapter of Breaking Free and didn't know what it was, but I just was like, let me get some thoughts down. And the next week, the world shut down and I didn't think about it again. And I was not the girl that was like, I'm going to use my time wisely and write a book. I was the pandemic girl that was like, the world's on fire. Everything's broken. I just somebody take care of me. Everything's messed up.
Oh my gosh. I'm totally remembering that and seeing people on social media who's like, we're like, I'm using this time to grow organic food, make bread, and also write my magnum opus. I'm 400,000 words in. And I was like, I'm in my pajamas. It's 4 p.m. Do I brush my teeth today? I did not also thrive those first few weeks.
Yes. Same. That was my story as well. So I just always say that so nobody's like, oh, so you wrote a book during the pandemic. But what happened is the end of April, my editor called. She said, hey, let's hop on Zoom real quick. I actually want to talk about your next book. And I said, okay. And the first thing I said to her was like, I hope you have a good idea because I don't want to write that body book. I'm not trying to write that anymore. And she was like, interestingly, she was like, I just have one question for you. And she said, how do you think women are feeling about their bodies right about now? You know, they've been in the house for 6 weeks. And I was like, I think they feel pretty bad about their bodies. She said, out of curiosity, how do you think women are going to feel about their bodies a year from now? I was like, I think they're going to feel pretty bad about their bodies. So she said, here's what I want you to do. This is all I'm telling you to do. And she said, I want you to just buy every book you can find on Christian body image. And she said, I just want you to buy anything you can find. She said, it doesn't have to be Christian, like read secular books, just find whatever you can find, read it and tell me what happens. That was a Thursday. We had that phone call on a Thursday. I bought a bunch of books on Amazon. They were at my house by Saturday. And the following Monday, without her permission or guidance, I started writing Breaking Free from Body Shame.
That's awesome. She knows. She knows about your stay angry. She knew to ask the right question.
And then you'll totally appreciate this as an author. I had no clearance. My publisher had not like cleared the book in any way, shape, or form. I wasn't supposed to write a book that year, so they didn't have me slated for the following year. Who knew what was happening with the publishing world? They were pulling books.
Totally.
And I wrote Breaking Free from Body Shame in a fury in 60 days. Just like tap, 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 tap. I turned it in June. I wrote it in May, like most of May and a few weeks in June, turned it in at the end of June, and it came out in June 2021. So yes, it was massively fueled by anger about what the assault of shame against my sisters in Christ. And it was massively fueled by anger about what I found in what people were saying about women's bodies. And thankfully, it does not read as an angry book. In fact,
not at all.
There's a few reviews that are like, she's like too gentle. And I'm like, no one's ever said that about me. Thank you. But it was fueled by deep angst.
Well, I'm so glad you got on that train because we need this book. And it's a book unlike any other that I've read in this vein. It's so beautifully, I'm for a word person, I'm failing here. It is the most beautiful combo of exactly what you're talking about, gentleness and in my heart, in my face, not letting me look away. And I'm wondering if part of what you're doing or what you did as you started tap, tap, tapping, was part of this a reaction to having a teenage daughter? Because I've met your just delightful daughter, Glory, and she has been already a gift to my girls, but I have 2 teenage girls too. And this entire idea shifted violently on its axis once I started seeing them coming for my kids. Like and my own gross that has remained, or when I would hear myself saying things about my body, and just, I've come a long way too, by the grace of God, but still there are little pieces of narrative that come out when I'm in front of the mirror, when I'm looking at a photo. And so my girls have had power in this, silent power, when I watch them and think, oh no, I don't, this is not okay for you. I don't want you to go through your life thinking this about yourself. They've had more power starting from when Anna was really little and I was in front of the mirror, turning back and forth, very unhappy with what I was seeing. And I said something out loud. And I remember Mark saying to me, I've said this before, he said, what will we do when Anna hears you talking like that? And that broke me. I sobbed that day because I thought, okay, so this isn't just mine anymore. This isn't just my own junk that I get to schlep around and take out and turn it in the light and decide to just keep it. This is hers now, unless I do something. Mm-hmm. So did Glory have any part of this, or being at this stage of your parenting?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, this is one of those opportunities where I feel like I could tell a really good story, but I'm going to tell the truth instead. And here's the truth. Well, Glory is 14 right now. She's about 14 and a half. And I would say, so I wrote this when she was 12, newly 12. I'll say if I had a 14-year-old, I think it would have hit different. But what you need to know about who Glory was at 12, and really who God made her to be, who she still is, and who she has always been as a kid, is I would say, yes, was it spurred on by Glory? 100%. But mostly in that my daughter is the most confident woman I've ever met. I
love that and love her. And that's a whole different level of love for her. How? It's so great. I see it.
Yes. And so even now when we talk about body image openly, sweet sister has some kind of sweet bubble wrap around her head, and she always has.
I love it.
And I'm very grateful. And so a lot of people ask me that, like, was it just so spurred on by your desire, or like how you saw your kids struggling? And I would say, like, no. Was it spurred on by watching her freedom? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. And I think really for me, I mean, it's so interesting because a lot of my freedom from body shame, you know, the number one misconception about the book is everybody's like, oh, so you just want us to all be unhealthy and eat all the time, which I'm like, no. What I want people to do is worship God in their bodies and not worship their bodies, you know, and I want them to give God glory in their bodies, and I want them to give God glory for their bodies. That's my ultimate desire. But for me, the process of breaking free from body shame actually meant that I moved more, and none of it was fueled by wanting to lose weight. It was like, hold on, I'm going to stop believing these lies that I'm this unathletic, you know, like waste of space, and I'm going to start having fun in my body. And actually I'm going to probably exercise more, because I've realized that exercise doesn't have to be about making myself smaller or better. Exercise can be for me about endorphins and worship and like exercising some authority and autonomy in my body with God and all these things. But I would say I was very spurred on back when Glory was 6, 7, 8, and I was just in the thick of it, because she has always been so acutely aware of her kingdom capacity in her body. I mean, she is the girl who's like, I can do that. I can do a double back handspring. Yeah. And she's not had any training to do that. She would hurt herself if she did, but she's like, I'm going to try. Huh? Yeah. You know her, she was at camp this week with us, or this summer with us at Hope Hills camp. About halfway through the week, she comes to me and she's like, listen, I found a one-way plane ticket. I've cleared it with the camp. I'm going to be staying here by myself and flying home.
That's got my shifts covered at Chick-fil-A, I believe she said. I got my shifts covered at Chick-fil-A. She did. Did you hear when she told me that story? I was staying there with you, and I think you had to talk to someone else, and she turned to me and she was like, listen, here's what happened. Last year, I wanted the same thing, and I said it too quickly. I didn't think about it, and they could so instinctively say no. So this year I came prepared. She had planned her PowerPoint. She knew what you were going to say. This girl, I mean, talk about setting the world on fire. I cannot get enough of her. I love it. I love it that she's like that.
Yeah. So I do feel so broken and again, the older she gets, the more new things she's encountering and the messages she's encountering. So I feel so like burdened and broken for all of the teen girls, but mostly I look at Glory and I'm like, I just like, since she was 6, she'd walk up to a mirror and be like, woo, I look good. Woo.
I just love it. I just can't get enough of that. I love it that she's the one who's modeling for you. This is how really you should feel about this all.
Yeah.
Oh, I just love it. Okay, I would love to talk a little. You mentioned this right here about maybe a misconception is if we are kind to our bodies, we do whatever we want, meaning as many potato chips or whatever. I don't know. I don't even know how to answer that sentence. It's different for everybody. But
Yeah.
that's hilarious to me. I did not know that people had a misconception about the book because you do run half marathons. So I think they haven't probably paid very much attention. But talk to me about that, about the balance between um taking care of the goodness. You set the stage so beautifully in your book that God didn't just say this is good. He said this is much good. There's muchness of good. Like the way he looks at our bodies is, wow, this is just the pinnacle of my creation. It is beautiful. So where talk to me about the line between, and maybe there is no line, maybe it's a circle, accepting the beauty and the diversity and the goodness of our bodies and resting in that and making sure we're taking care of that goodness and not worshiping the body for the body's sake. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I anticipated a lot of things about the book, a lot of like, oh, I'm going to have to answer for this, or I'm going to have to explain this. That one kind of hit me out of left field. Like
Interesting.
I was
Yeah, I
like,
didn't know that
oh,
one.
weird. Um, I think especially because you only know your story. And I was
Yeah.
really trying to consider other women's stories, um, a lot in this book, but in your mind, you forget that people don't know who you are as the author. And I'm like, oh no, right. I love a marathon. I'm a literal fitness instructor. Like
Yeah.
I like the
Like
moving.
movement. Yeah.
Yeah. I have an autoimmune disease. I have to eat like a really specific diet and take really good care of my body, like basically just to stay out of the hospital.
Mm.
So I was like, oh, we're not like playing here. You know, we're not
Yeah.
like eating cake and watching TV. I mean, unless that's worship to you. But I mean, I do eat cake and I do watch
Yeah.
TV. I just
Let's
meant
be
like
clear.
to
Right.
excess. Yes.
Totally.
Oh, cake sounds good right now. But here's the line. I tell people a lot. I feel like really what the book is about, an underlying message that I hope women maybe don't even notice, but gain some ground in walking in is just the capacity to hear from God. I think a lot of the book is about saying, listen, you hear from God and you have a body and he gave you your body and he cares about your body and he's going to communicate to you through your body. And I want women to be able to hear from God in new cellular ways. For example, like experiencing hunger and feeding our bodies. And so all of diet culture has even gotten into the church where we're like, to be hungry and to not meet that means that you're strong or you're righteous in some way, or the same way that we're like, when we're tired and we keep going, we're somehow strong. And it's like, actually, no, like God actually made your body to need rest. And so when you rest, you're even obeying him. His kingdom come, his will be done. His kingdom comes when his will is done. So even when we rest, his kingdom is coming. When we feed ourselves and nourish our bodies, his kingdom is coming. So I do want women to learn how to listen to God in their bodies about what is worshipful for them. What I absolutely don't advocate for is exercising in a way that does not leave you in awe of God. If you're moving your body in a way that is making you obsessed with your body, that's making you feel like you're striving, that's making you feel like you're just a hot mess, if you're moving your body in a way that's just leaving you just obsessed and focused on how you're going to get better, then I would say like that's probably not worship. But I would advocate for finding a way to moving your body in a way that leaves you more in awe of God. That is like, wow, I've seen a little more of him. I've heard from him. I'm engaging like a mind body connection with my spirit as I move. But so the line is this, and the simple question to ask over and over again is this: am I doing this to make my body good, or am I doing this because my body is good? And it just flips that passage that everyone seems to want to use as like a knife. That's like, treat your body as a temple, to like, hold on, like your body is a temple. It's already a temple.
Right.
John 15, Jesus says, you're already clean because of the word I've spoken to you. You're not becoming a temple. You're a temple. You're already clean. So if you're already clean, if you're already a temple, if you're already a place where the Holy Spirit indwells, how do you want to treat yourself?
Yes.
How would God treat you? How would he mother you? How would he father you in your own body? And how can we learn to do that as an act of worship. So that's the line. Am I doing this to make my body good, or am I doing it because my body is good?
So good and so wise. And it's like the light shifts in a different way. You see everything differently. You talk about, this is in line with your admonition to see our bodies as gifts, not projects. That idea, I had to put the book down, lay back, think about it, come back again. That idea that my body is a project is so familiar to me. You peeled all these onion layers off for me to remember, oh, my body's not a project. There's not some goal here other than, as you say, worship. And knowing what a magnificent gift that allows us to do all of these beautiful things through our days. I love that. That changes everything. It's not a project. It's not on your goal sheet. It's a gift that allows you to do what all of these amazing things that God has already pre-wired for you to do. That's a totally different gig.
It's so different. When people ask me, what does it feel like? What does it feel like to be free from body shame? Which I just think is such a wise question. Like, what am I actually going for here?
Right.
It's gonna, or I even love the question before that, which is like, does it feel different? Do you feel different? I had a lot of people, especially when the book came out, in interviews, who would say, like, give it to me straight. Like, you actually feel different. You actually like your body. And I was like, oh, I'm just so glad that you asked me that question so I can answer with a resounding yes.
Yeah.
That I used to hate my body and I love my body. And I feel that actively. And that doesn't mean that shame doesn't creep up, and it doesn't mean I don't occasionally feel insecure, but my reaction time is so much quicker to speak truth. But that being said, if somebody's asking me, like, what does it feel like? The best way I can describe it to people, is I always say, like, do you ever have one of those dreams where you're back in high school or you're back in college and you are like, oh, I have a test and I forgot I have a test.
Oh, all the time.
I've got to do it. I have that all the time.
All the time.
And then did you ever like wake up and feel that relief of
Yes.
like, I never have to take another test again. I'm not taking the test again. That's how I feel in my body. I'm like, I don't ever have to take a test again.
What a great metaphor. You must be a writer or something. That's
I'm glad it hits, because like that's exactly, I'm like, I never have to take a test again.
I don't have to.
Or like I have an event coming up this weekend, and the voice of shame in my head is like, are you gonna look cute for the event? Are you gonna have your body ready? And and then it'll hit and I'll be like, I'm ready. It's already ready.
Totally ready. Oh my gosh.
Great news.
That is such a great word picture of how freedom feels. I just love it. And for a girl who was anti-writing her body shame book, I am so glad you wrote this book. I'm just so grateful. This is one of your gifts, Jess Connolly, is putting language on things. I see this even in your social media posts. So how about that? You put language to things we need language for. And I so appreciate that, both in this, where we are talking today about bodies and non-projects, but also I have loved how you have written most recently about how you are thriving and working through and living through anxiety. Are you okay with talking a little bit about that now and your experience on that road? I would love to hear that, both for our adult listeners, and then also, I think the most recent stat is that 32% of teen girls on a daily basis are experiencing some sort of anxiety disorder. I feel like it is endemic. It is everywhere.
Yeah.
And I need you to talk into this, both as moms, as daughters, as people who are experiencing it. Just tell us, coach us how to move through those moments and what to do with it. Yeah.
Well, I will readily say I'm not an expert, but I'll give you some notes from the field.
That's right.
Out here in my bunker.
From the trenches. Yes.
Yeah. So I was one of those people, and I think this is helpful to hear if anybody resonates with this. I was one of those people that if somebody said, hey, I'm feeling anxiety, or I have anxiety today, I would like turn my head a little to the side and be like, what do you mean? Like you stressed? You feel a little stressed? Like, I don't get it, because my my baseline is like, I'm a little stressed. So
Yeah.
that works for me. Like,
Right.
I didn't understand. I would be like, I
Fair.
don't get it.
Yeah.
And I beginning in, I went through a brief season in my like early 20s where I really struggled with my mental health, and I didn't have language. I did get professional help, but I didn't even have language to like describe what I was dealing with. So I think I probably experienced a few panic attacks then, but I didn't have language for it and I didn't know what was happening. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I started having some really spread out occasions of acute anxiety, for me manifesting in panic attacks. And I didn't know what they were the first few times. And they happened to always occur when I was not stressed. Most of mine occurred while exercising. I had one during my first marathon. That was a really interesting experience.
Pause. Did you say marathon, not half marathon? You have run
Yes.
marathons. Okay, well, let's just correct that.
I've run
Okay.
one marathon,
Every
and I
mile.
did have a panic attack in the middle of it.
Okay, but I just am going to say, I will never do that probably. And so I want to just pause in the recording to say, correct the record. I was wrong. She's not a half marathoner. She is a full marathoner. And I feel like since most people tell the stories of like mile 20 to whatever, when they like, go potty on themselves and it's the worst, it's the dark night of the soul. I'm going to give you credit for all of it. All of it. You did all of it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I
did finish it. I did somehow by the grace of God finish it, but I
had a panic attack during.
Had a panic attack at mile 14.
Oh.
And helpful to note, I do know what sparked the panic attack. Well, I think that a lot of mine happened to come while exercising, just because of like increased heart rate. I think like, again, mind body connection. My body was like experiencing what my mind was always experiencing. And I think that may have played into it. But helpful to this story of my struggle with anxiety, when I was finally able to like unravel what had happened the day of the marathon, I realized I'd gotten a text a few minutes before mile 14 from a friend whose birthday I realized I had missed that week. And so my mental mind started spinning of like, why am I trying hard things? I can't even remember my friend's birthday. She's cheering me on. I couldn't cheer her on. Like, what's my problem? And so that led to like a little bit of panic that then I just couldn't stop because my body was physically in it. So that, I had a few like acute panic attacks, but I still would not have said I was a person who was anxious.
Jess, can I ask real quick? What is that? How does a panic how did you know? Did you have language that, oh, this is a panic attack? Or what does your body do in that moment?
Yeah. So for me, and that's such a helpful question. For me, again, the first two ones, I had no idea what was happening, but I felt like I was having a heart attack. My chest starts hurting really bad. And then this is graphic, but I usually get physically ill. I usually vomit. So it like the first time it happened in the last 5 or 6 years, I was at the gym exercising. And all of a sudden I was like, no, I have to go to the hospital. I have to go to the hospital. Something's wrong with me. And then like 5 minutes later, I vomited. And then my body would go like placid. Like I couldn't move. I had to be in bed for the rest of the day. And so the first time I was like, I must have had a stomach bug.
Right.
So I didn't know. I was like, I don't know what's happening.
Right.
And then the more they were just that exact pattern, I was like, oh, there's something happening here. But again, no day-to-day anxiety. No, I wouldn't have felt anxious before that, 2 hours before that, So that was interesting, but I just kind of paid attention to that. I saw a therapist. I talked to her about it occasionally. I didn't stress about it. Enter the pandemic. As I said, I was not calm. I was not chill. I was not like walking around my neighborhood reading Psalm 91. I was like, what's happening? The world's on fire. Everything's broken. This is not okay. We're not okay. Everything's not okay. And that is when I started experiencing daily anxiety, heart palpitations every single day, physical signs of stress, increased cortisol, not sleeping. I started like really struggling with my sleep. And for me, for really 2 years, it always manifested itself in I'm scared to get sick. And
Mm.
I'm more than I'm scared to get sick, I'm scared to get someone else sick. So I wouldn't have said I'm worried about finances. I wouldn't have said I'm worried about my kids. I wouldn't have said I'm, worried about our church. I would have said I just constantly thought about being sick.
Mm.
And I took my temperature aggressively.
Mm.
And I have swear to all things good and holy, I think I've taken more COVID tests than anybody in the world. I took many, many, many COVID
A
tests.
lot of swabbing.
A lot of swabbing. I've started to feel more comfortable if I just took one just to be. I wouldn't have any symptoms. Just take one before I'm going to be around people. But I'm going to cut through like hours and hours of counseling to say what I think was happening is that for me, the spiritual thing that was happening is that I was believing a lie that I was responsible for everything. And I had a lot to sort out in my soul and in my mind about what was mine to handle and what was not mine to handle. And so in January of 2022, I stopped sleeping, which was really cute. And so I would have like every 4 nights I wouldn't sleep and I'd just have some insomnia. And then it turned into like, I'd go 2 or 3 nights where I didn't sleep and then I'd sleep the fourth night. And then I started having kind of rolling panic attacks through the night where I started to feel anxious about even like going in my bedroom. And I was just struggling with some true like insomnia anxiety. And again, I'm not laying in bed thinking about my family. I'm not laying in bed thinking about politics. I'm laying in bed thinking like, am I sick? Was that a cough? Did Nick just sneeze? Is that a tickle in my throat? Does my forehead feel warm? So it was just really interesting like anxiety. So I doubled up on getting help in every form. So I started getting healing prayer and deliverance prayer from like basically anyone who would pray for me. And again, this is why you asking for prayer at the beginning of Hope Heals is nothing to me because I walk into church and Nick's like, everybody, literally, he's talking to the whole church. Everybody come and lay hands on her. She's where she's at. She hasn't slept for 4 days, I got professional help from a doctor. I had to start taking a medication specifically to be able to make it through those bouts of anxiety at night, to be able to sleep again. And I started changing my life. So the biggest change is that the stupidest part about my life is that up until that point is that I work a full-time job at Go and Tell Gals, coaching women and writing books and teaching and leading a team. And I also worked a full-time job leading our staff at our church. And so about 2 months into the extreme anxiety, Nick was like, listen, you're doing so many good things. I'm so proud of you. You're going to a doctor, you're taking medication, you're seeing a therapist, you're seeing a spiritual director. You're also getting fired from the church.
We're going to let you go.
Yeah. From this unpaid full-time position
Yeah.
that like your soul actually cannot handle. And I was like, okay. And then
you really were like, okay, like, did you know, okay, this is the right thing? Was there any pushback in you?
I had
because I bet you did really well at that. And I bet that's your heartbeat.
I had about 3 hours of panic because everyone in my life says it's the most loving thing he ever did to me. He gave me no warning. I came home from work and he was writing the email to our staff and leadership and
firing you before he fired you. Wow.
And saying like, you're not allowed to ask her a question. If you ask her a question, she's going to say, ask Nick. She's my wife and that's all she is. So I had about 3 hours of panic, but most of my panic was rooted in what will other people think. And thankfully everybody else on staff was like, finally, we love you. You've done a great job. This is not good for you. So I had 2 or 3 days where I felt like, is this okay? And then I felt nothing but relief, and I felt nothing but relief since that day. But
Nick,
then I started
Nick for the win. Ready, aim, fire, and fired off that email. Man, I mean, I already knew I liked him, but that is that's such a great move, Nick.
It was a great move.
Wow.
I said no to every speaking engagement except for one for this fall because I was like, I can't do this. I took a teary trip again. Why you're my kind of gal. I took a teary trip to go see my publisher where I did nothing but sit in a boardroom and cry. And we captured every thought I was having and said, like, maybe one day we'll use this in ministry, but like right now, let's just get all this out on a whiteboard. And that was helpful. So all of those things started to pile up into like, beginning of May, I can sleep through the night again. Like June and July, I'm having one panic attack a month, not one a night. And I will just, I'm so cautious to talk about this in this way, but I can't not finish the story and say, again, I talked to my spiritual director, last Wednesday, and she says, you have not mentioned the word anxiety for a month. And I was like, I haven't felt it. I haven't felt it. And it is not always that quick for everyone. And I am so grateful. And I will never prescribe like a 1 + 2 = 3 equation for anyone. But I will say, I want people to know that there is hope, and that and in the same way that, had someone told me when I was in the thick of body shame that I would one day love my body, I wouldn't have believed them. And if somebody had told me in April and May, you are actually going to go weeks without even thinking about this, I wouldn't have known what to believe. I would have been like, I can't, that's unimaginable. And again, I just want to credit, like, for me, it took professional help. It took spiritual help. A lot of people praying for me, a lot of me, like, taking a lot of spiritual authority in my life. But for me, I do think the most important part was digging back and saying, foundationally, I somehow believe that I am on the hook for all of these things. And I cannot live this way anymore. If Matthew 11 is true, and if Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will show you, I will help you recover your life. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. If that is true, if Jesus is real, then something has gone amiss. And I cannot keep saying, like, ha ha ha, I'm a people pleaser. I can't keep saying, like, I just like to stay busy. I cannot this is not child's play. This is my actual soul, and I'm going to lose it. And he is telling me there's a better way. So that's the real work that I'm still really digging into, of like, what is mine to hold and what is not? What is God's responsibility? What does it look like for me to worship and take authority for my life and love people well and serve people well and lead well? And also go to sleep at night knowing, like, I do not keep the world spinning. I do not keep my children well. I do not keep other people safe. God does these things. And sometimes he allows those things to not happen. And I don't know. So that's a really long answer. That's where I'm at with anxiety. That's what it looked like for me. But I'm very grateful I got help. And I'm very grateful that also getting help afforded me the ability to now be able to dig into the soul stuff, because I could not have dug into it when I was actually out of my mind and not sleeping,
Oh, Jess, I mean, first of all, I pray that you end up writing about this, because this is our daily, man. I mean, I have so many people in my life who are dealing with this, either in their own hearts, their own brains, their own bodies, or they're helping their kids, and feeling at a loss of, I mean, when you were talking about how you would lie in bed and worry, not about the things that maybe some other people were worrying about, how illogical it was, that it felt to you illogical, and still you couldn't. That entire idea of how do we help people through something that feels illogical is a mountain to climb. And I feel like we just are fumbling in the dark, and I don't think it's going away. But when you are careful to say that you're cautious and that you're not the expert, I am saying to you, the trench report is so important. And it's so important that you are saying out loud, you don't always have to feel like this. You won't always feel like this. This isn't going to be your norm. You gathered a team around you, and maybe you didn't, maybe that was throwing darts at a board, but all of those darts helped you come to where you are now. And I want that to be heard and echoed from these mics that won't be forever. It won't be forever. You will need help, and that's okay. That's the best news, that there is help. But that sliver of hope, I know that you are not a licensed psychiatrist or psychologist. And actually, I feel like that has even more weight in some ways, because you've walked this road and you're walking this road. So for you to say, look, there's light at the end of this. That is just such a gift to hear for so many folks listening. So thank you
for giving me the opportunity to share it. That feels like a gift to me, for sure.
Okay, one last question. I do
ready.
this for all of my guests, and I ask them a book nerd question. Since you are a book person, you write books, I'm just curious about a couple of things. It's a two-parter. My first part is, what's a book that you have recommended over and over the years? Or think about even years after you read it. We're fans of the backlist over here, as an author myself. When you you publish a book and 14 minutes later, Barnes & Noble pulls it off the shelf.
Yes.
I'm a fan of the backlist. So what's something that you've recommended or thought about or has stuck with you? That's part one. And part two, what's a book you're excited about or curious about or have recently read that you just would love to shout about?
Oh, I love both of these questions, because
Okay.
you really can't answer one without the other. You're always
Totally
like,
true.
but also there's this.
I love it.
You know? Okay. Also, mine are both the same author.
Okay, then.
Interesting, huh?
I love this. I'm so ready. Pencil at the ready.
If people told me that they have not read A Long Obedience in the Same Direction by
Okay,
Eugene
I know
Peterson.
exactly where you're going with this. Okay, I'm really excited about this. Yep.
That's my like faithful, A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. It's actually not what you think the title is going to be about. It's about like how we walk with God. It's based on the Psalms of Ascent. Are
you a rereader? Have you
I read it every year.
You don't. That's what I'm talking about. Year. That's why I love this question. I get to see inside brains. So good. Every year.
It's a great one to reread every year.
Okay.
I haven't reread it in 2020, or 2022, but when we were with you guys at Hope Hills, we were teaching on the Psalms of Ascent. So we were kind of looking it up.
Were.
But A Long Obedience.
That's another book you need to write, but go ahead.
Oh my gosh, you're amazing. I can't touch it after Eugene.
I'm giving you homework, everything you say. So we better calm down.
But a book that is not new, but that is new to me, that I'm currently reading, that it's like I'm having to stop myself from posting it on social media every day. And like, here's a quote or quoting it everywhere, is Run with the Horses by Eugene Peterson. Is it your favorite? Do you love it?
Here is the thing.
Or is it just Runs with Horses? I don't know.
It's around here. I'd have to check. We'll make sure it's in the show notes. So, that book, I've had that book on my shelf for years. I actually met Eugene Peterson and his wife on the same night.
Oh my gosh.
It was a billion years ago. Somehow I scored this ticket to this tiny room up. It was like literally an upper room packed with people. He did one little short talk. It was at a book thing, a conference. We were writing for the same publisher at the same time. So I think that's how I got in. Mark and I went in. We had just found the message, and Mark, who's super linear, had just read Romans in the message and had cried and kept saying, I've never understood this book before. And so we went because his book was like changing the way we read the Bible. Well, we listened to him talk. He was lovely. I went up to him afterwards and absolutely embarrassed myself. Seems to be a theme when I'm excited to meet people. And they gave us a comp copy of Run with the Horses. Run with the Horses?
Wow. I think it is Run with the Horses.
Sat on my shelf for years. This spring, I don't know what prompted me to read that thing. Jess.
It's too much.
I hear what you are saying, that like, I underline, I star, I underline, I star. I got finished with that book and started over. I am not a rereader. Started over on page 1, reading again over and over all the things I underlined. What in the world
It's too much. Okay, listen, I have my favorite quote pulled up right here. Can I
Please.
read it?
Yes.
It's from early in the book. So if you don't know, Run with the Horses is about Jeremiah.
Yeah.
It's about Jeremiah.
Right.
And there is this one line from Jeremiah 12 where God says to Jeremiah, like Jeremiah is like tired and frustrated. And God says to Jeremiah, if you had raced with men on foot and they had worn you out, how can you compete with horses? If you stumble in safe country, how will you manage in the thickets by the Jordan? So that's what the book is like, not based on, but that like catapulted out of.
Totally.
And
Just found it. The subtitle is
found
The
it.
Quest for Life at its Best, which makes it, that doesn't even live up to what this book is, but it's about
Yes.
just tackling life in a long haul of beautiful, again, this obedience, but just a rich life. Yes, please go.
So before I read this quote, I think what we have to, I hope you can confirm because you actually met him, which makes me so happy for you, is like what I think is most interesting about Eugene is that he's such a soft place to land. And like I mean, I've read his biography, like he lived this rhythmic, deep, measured life. There's like not a striver, pusher, hard person in him. That's not who he is.
Right.
But so you have to have that context when I read this quote because it's so intense. Okay. So this is my favorite quote. It's from like chapter 2. It's early in the book.
Okay.
And this is what Eugene says. He says, life is difficult, Jeremiah. Are you going to quit at the first wave of opposition? Are you going to retreat when you find that there's more to life than finding 3 meals a day and a dry place to sleep at night? Are you going to run home the minute you find that the mass of men and women are more interested in keeping their feet warm than in living at risk to the glory of God? Are you going to live cautiously or courageously? I called you to live at your best, to pursue righteousness. Oh gosh, it gets good right here. To sustain a drive toward excellence. It is easier, I know, to be neurotic. It is easier to be parasitic. It is easier to relax in the embracing arms of the average, easier but not better, easier but not more significant, easier but not more fulfilling. I called you to a life of purpose far beyond what you think yourself capable of living and promised you adequate strength to fulfill your destiny. Now, at the first sign of difficulty, you're ready to quit. That's all. That's all. Read Run with the Horses.
And that's chapter 2.
That's chapter 2.
It is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Yeah. No, I completely, I am so glad you brought up that book because, and it's old. I don't even know what
it's old. Yeah.
I don't know the pub date. It looks like it was 1983.
Oh,
I don't know why
gosh.
I'm just realizing this, but anyway, thank you for that recommendation. Absolutely 15 stars out of 15 stars. Just ridiculous. And a rereader for sure.
Yeah.
Jess Connolly. You are running with horses, and I'm so grateful to know you. So grateful for your time today. I know that lots of things compete, and I know you are saying very few precious yeses. And so thank you for taking the time to talk about all you know and all you're learning and the things you're curious about. Just really, really grateful for you. And I'm so grateful for your unicorn way of living, that you have your eyes fixed on exactly the only thing, the only one that will allow this this to all make sense and to his glory. So thank you a million times over, especially after our snotty beginning.
Oh, I'm so grateful for you. It's so grateful to be running alongside you for sure. I love you.
Thank you for coming.